Hello.
I never thought I'd catch my wife of 25 years stealing company secrets for her lover. The random call from an unknown man was just the beginning. When I discovered they were plotting to use my own business deals against me, I didn't explode with rage. I got calculating. Now she's walking away with nothing, completely unaware that I've secured $10 million she'll never touch. Betrayal taught me one thing. In business and marriage, always be 2 steps ahead. My name is Daniel Harrison. I'm 52 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. I'm a venture capitalist, one of the founding partners at Harrison and Blackwell Investments. We specialize in tech startups, and I've guided more than a few unicorns to successful IPOs. I mention this not to brag, but to set the stage. In my professional life, I'm paid to spot red flags, to sense when something doesn't add up. Yet in my marriage, I missed every warning sign. It started on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my corner office downtown, reviewing a potential deal worth roughly $8 million. The atmosphere was hushed, just the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the occasional ping from my laptop. I was deep in spreadsheets when my phone buzzed against the desk. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. After the fourth buzz, I relented and checked the screen for missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Probably another startup founder desperate for funding. I sighed and went back to my numbers. But then the fifth call came through, and curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. "Hello," I said, expecting to hear a rehearsed elevator pitch. Instead, a man's voice, agitated and slightly breathless, cut through the line. "Listen, tell Melissa to stop playing games, or I swear to God, this whole thing blows up." My blood ran cold. "Melissa, my Melissa, who is this?" I managed to keep my voice steady, years of negotiation tactics kicking in automatically. The line went silent for a beat too long. Then, "Wait, is this Eric?" "No," I said, my mind racing. "This is Melissa's husband." "Who are you, and what games are you talking about?" Another pause, heavier this time. "I think I've said enough." The line went dead. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, the kind of clarity that comes when something you've subconsciously suspected gets confirmed. I didn't throw my phone or curse or call Melissa demanding answers. That wasn't my style. In business, I'd learned that the person who reacts emotionally loses. So I did what I do best. I started gathering information. I opened my laptop, pulled up our shared calendar, and began looking for patterns. As I scrolled through months of appointments and meetings, something caught my eye. Every Tuesday afternoon for the past 4 months, Melissa had a standing yoga class scheduled from 2 to 4 p.m. My wife hated yoga. She tried it once years ago and complained for days about how boring it was. I reached for my phone again and opened our location sharing app, something we'd set up years ago for safety. I hadn't checked it in forever. According to the app, Melissa wasn't at any yoga studio. She was across town, in an area I didn't immediately recognize. Game on. I've always believed that people reveal themselves in patterns. In business, I look for those patterns before investing millions in a company. Why should my personal life be any different? That evening, I told my assistant I had a family emergency and headed home. The suburban streets of Newton were quiet as I pulled into our driveway. Melissa's car wasn't there. No surprise. According to her calendar, she was having dinner with her friend Sarah. Our 5-bedroom colonial stood silent and empty. We'd bought it when our careers were taking off, thinking we'd fill it with kids. That never happened. We got too busy. Now it felt cavernous, filled with expensive furniture instead of family. I stood in our kitchen, debating my next move. In 25 years of marriage, I'd never snooped through Melissa's things. But these weren't normal circumstances. Her MacBook sat on the kitchen island. She'd always been careless with technology, using the same passwords for everything, never logging out. I opened it, and sure enough, it unlocked without resistance. Her email revealed nothing suspicious, just the usual work correspondence, online shopping confirmations, and newsletter subscriptions. But her browsing history told a different story. Multiple searches for weekend getaways within driving distance, hotel bookings that coincided with her yoga classes, and most damning of all, dozens of text messages to someone saved simply as C in her contacts. The text started innocently enough months ago. Casual conversation, inside jokes. Then they evolved. Miss you already. Tuesday can't come soon enough. He's working late again tonight. He, me. I was he now, not Dan, or honey, or even my husband. Just he. I scrolled to the contact information. Just a phone number. The same one that had called me earlier that day. I saved it to my phone. As I sat there, processing what I'd found, I heard Melissa's car pull into the driveway. I closed her laptop, returning it exactly as I'd found it, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. By the time she walked in, I was casually leaning against the counter, the perfect picture of an oblivious husband. Hey, she said, dropping her purse on the counter. You're home early. Yeah, wrapped up a meeting sooner than expected. The lie came easily. How is Sarah? Melissa smiled, that same warm smile I'd fallen for decades ago. Great. She's thinking of remodeling her kitchen, so we looked at some design magazines. I nodded, taking a swig of beer to hide my expression. Sarah had moved to Chicago 3 months ago. Sounds fun, I said. Game on, indeed. I needed more information, and I knew exactly who to call. James Reeves and I go way back. College roommates who took different paths. While I went into finance, James became a private investigator. He owed me. I'd saved his business during the recession with a timely loan. I called him the next morning from my office. Danny boy, he answered, voice gruff from years of cigarettes. Been a minute. I need a favor, I said, keeping my voice low despite being alone. Off the books. James didn't hesitate. Name it. I need you to follow someone. Discreetly. I gave him Melissa's schedule and the phone number labeled C. This about Mel? He asked, cutting to the chase. Just need some clarity, I replied, not ready to say the words out loud. Consider it done. I'll start today. I threw myself into work, reviewing investment proposals and meeting with clients. But my mind kept drifting to Melissa and her mysterious C. By afternoon, my concentration was shot. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Got something. Plaza Hotel downtown. Room 712. She's not alone. My stomach lurched, but I forced myself to focus. I had a board meeting in 20 minutes. I couldn't fall apart now. After the meeting, James sent photos. Melissa entering the hotel, a tall man holding the door for her. His face was partially obscured, but something about him seemed familiar. Any ID on him? I texted. Working on it. They've got reservations at Carmine's tonight. Wanting to follow. Yes. Everything they do. That night, I maintained the facade at home. We ate takeout and watched a movie. Melissa curled against me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. The casual intimacy felt like a knife twist. Business dinner tomorrow, she mentioned during a commercial. The Boston Women in Business monthly thing. Don't wait up. I nodded, stroking her hair. No problem. I've got that Singapore deal to review anyway. More lies, piling up between us like a wall. Tomorrow would be revealing. James texted me late that night. ID confirmed. Christopher Walton, investment banker at Morgan Stanley. You know him. The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. Chris Walton, not just any banker. The guy whose firm had competed against mine for the Nextech deal last year. The deal I'd won. The next day, I did some digging of my own on Christopher Walton. LinkedIn revealed he'd been at Morgan Stanley for 15 years, specializing in tech acquisitions, my territory. His profile showed the polished smile of a man used to getting what he wanted. Square jaw, perfect teeth, confident eyes. The kind of guy who probably played lacrosse in college. I scrolled through our mutual connections, finding several. Then it hit me. Last year's charity gala for Boston Children's Hospital. Melissa had organized it, and I'd been too swamped with the Nextech deal to help much. Walton's firm had been a major donor. That must have been where they met. A sick feeling washed over me. Had I inadvertently introduced them? Had my absorption in work created the perfect opportunity? James called that afternoon. They're meeting again. Same hotel, same room. Wanting to set up audio surveillance. I hesitated. Did I really want to hear my wife with another man? But I needed the full picture. Do it, I said. And James, find out everything about Walton's finances. I want to know if he's in trouble, looking for an angle, anything unusual. On it. Also, I've been following the money trail. Your wife has a new credit card you don't know about. Opened 6 months ago. 6 months. The Nextech deal closed 7 months ago. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Send me the statements. When they arrived, I saw charges for lingerie, hotel rooms, and restaurants across Boston. always on Tuesdays and occasional weekends. She'd been charging thousands to a card I knew nothing about. The next revelation came from James late that night. Walton's firm is preparing a bid for Visionary Tech. Isn't that the startup you've been courting? My blood ran cold. Visionary Tech was about to revolutionize cloud security. We'd been in talks for months about a potential $15 million investment. If Morgan Stanley swooped in, it would be catastrophic for us. Was that what this was about? Was Walton using my wife to get insider information about my deals? I thought back to recent weeks. Melissa asking casual questions about work, showing more interest in my business than she had in years. Me, stupidly flattered, telling her about Visionary Tech's promising projections. This wasn't just an affair. It was corporate espionage. One more thing, James added. Walton's been in financial trouble. Gambling debts, bad investments. He needs a win. The pieces were falling into place. Walton wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using her to save his career at my expense. A cold, calculated rage settled in my chest. I'd been playing defense. It was time to attack. I spent the next week setting my trap. First, I called my attorney, Michael Chun. I need to protect my assets, I explained. Quietly. Michael didn't ask questions. That's why I kept him on retainer. Prenup still in place. Yes, but I want extra insurance. Move my personal holdings into the shell company we set up for the Frankfurt deal. The one Melissa doesn't know about. Next, I transferred most of our joint savings into my business account, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. Within 3 days, I'd secured my most valuable assets, including my stake in Harrison and Blackwell, worth roughly $10 million. The final piece was the Visionary Tech deal. I called their CEO, Alicia Patel. We need to move up our timeline, I told her, and I'm prepared to sweeten the offer. Alicia was surprised but receptive. How soon are we talking? Next week. And completely confidential. No paperwork until signing day. I was taking a risk, but a calculated one. If Walton was getting information through Melissa, he'd be blindsided by the accelerated timeline. Meanwhile, I played the role of clueless husband perfectly. I worked late, complained about Visionary Tech dragging their feet, and even mentioned I might be losing interest in the deal. Maybe it's not worth the hassle, I told Melissa over dinner. Their valuation seems inflated. She casually suggested we invite some friends over that weekend, something we hadn't done in months. I agreed, watching her text someone immediately after I left the room. James confirmed my suspicions the next day. She met Walton for lunch. Seemed urgent. He left looking pretty pleased with himself. Perfect. The bait was taken. That Friday, I received the confirmation I needed. A colleague at Morgan Stanley, who owed me a favor, tipped me off that Walton was rushing to prepare a competing offer for Visionary Tech, planning to undercut us the following week. He didn't know I'd already signed the papers that morning, with Alicia Patel agreeing to an exclusivity clause. Visionary Tech was mine. Now for the personal side of my revenge. I scheduled a business trip to New York for the following Tuesday, Melissa and Walton's regular day. But I wouldn't be leaving Boston. Instead, I'd be making an unexpected appearance at the Plaza Hotel, room 712. With James's audio surveillance in place and my lawyer on standby, I was ready to confront them both. Not with rage or violence, but with something far more damaging, evidence of corporate espionage. Walton wouldn't just lose my wife. He'd lose his career. Tuesday arrived with an unusual clarity to the air. One of those perfect Boston spring days that make you believe in new beginnings. Fitting, considering what was about to unfold. I told Melissa I'd be in New York for a last-minute meeting. She kissed me goodbye, her eyes briefly avoiding mine as she adjusted my tie. Good luck with the meeting. When will you be back? She asked. Late tonight. Don't wait up. Another lie added to our growing collection. Instead of heading to the airport, I drove to our office, where James waited with our attorney, Patricia Winters, a shark in an Armani suit who specialized in corporate espionage cases. Everything's in place, James confirmed. Audio surveillance is active in room 712. I've got a direct feed. He handed me an earpiece. You'll hear everything before you go in. Patricia reviewed the plan one last time. Remember, this isn't just about your marriage. The moment you document Walton with those files, we've got him on corporate espionage. Morgan Stanley will have no choice but to terminate him and disavow any knowledge of his actions. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. And Melissa? Patricia's expression softened slightly. That's personal, Daniel. But legally, the prenup is solid. Her involvement in corporate espionage could potentially void any claims beyond what the prenup stipulates. At 2 p.m., James and I sat in his surveillance van half a block from the Plaza Hotel, watching through a laptop as Melissa entered the lobby. 10 minutes later, Walton arrived, carrying his signature leather briefcase. "Let's get audio," I said. James activated the feed. Their voices filled the small space, casual at first, then more intimate. I forced myself to listen as they moved from pleasantries to passion. Then, finally to business. "Did you bring those projections?" Walton asked. "Everything you asked for," Melissa replied. "Dan has no idea Visionary is worth twice what they're claiming. The proprietary algorithm alone could revolutionize cloud security." My hands clenched in a fist. I'd shared those details with Melissa in confidence, believing she was finally taking an interest in my work. "Morgan Stanley will triple their offer," Walton said. "Your husband's firm will be completely blindsided." Melissa laughed, a sound I once loved. "By the time he figures it out, we'll be celebrating in the Maldives." James looked at me, concern in his eyes. "You okay?" I removed the earpiece. "I've heard enough. Let's finish this." We walked into the hotel, Patricia meeting us in the lobby. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless. Outside room 712, I took a deep breath, inserted the keycard James had procured, and opened the door. The scene was exactly as expected. Melissa and Walton in bed, documents spread around them. Their expressions shifted from shock to horror as they registered my presence. Then Patricia's, then James's. "Daniel." Melissa clutched the sheet to her chest. "What? How?" "Mr. Walton," Patricia cut in smoothly. "I'm Patricia Winters, legal counsel for Harrison and Blackwell Investments. I see you have some of our proprietary documents there. Would you care to explain how you obtained them?" Walton went pale, scrambling to gather the papers. "This isn't what it looks like." "It looks like corporate espionage," I said calmly, facilitated by my wife. "We've been recording your conversation, which clearly establishes intent." The next hour unfolded like a well-orchestrated business meeting. Patricia documented the evidence while James photographed everything. Walton called his lawyer, who advised him to say nothing further. Melissa sat frozen, tears silently streaming down her face. Through it all, I maintained a composed exterior, though inside, a 25-year marriage was turning to ash. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for them. By the next morning, Morgan Stanley had terminated Christopher Walton's employment and issued a public statement distancing themselves from his unauthorized and unethical activities. The SEC was investigating, and Walton Securities' license was suspended pending review. Visionary Tech's CEO, Alicia Patel, called to express her shock and gratitude. "We knew something was off about Morgan Stanley's sudden interest," she admitted. "Your warning saved us from a potentially disastrous situation." Our deal closed without a hitch, cementing Harrison and Blackwell's reputation as the premier venture capital firm for tech startups in New England. As for Melissa, she hadn't come home. A text at midnight informed me she was staying at her friend Lisa's house and needed time to think. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. James dropped by my office with a final surveillance report. "She's meeting with divorce attorneys," he said without preamble. "3 so far, all high profile, known for going after substantial settlements." I nodded, unsurprised. "Let her waste her time. Michael has everything locked down." "She doesn't know that yet," James noted. "According to our sources, she's telling them about your business assets, the house, investment accounts, painting a picture of significant wealth to divide." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "She mentioned the prenup to the last attorney," James continued. "He apparently told her prenups can be challenged if there's evidence of substantial asset growth or hidden wealth." "Let them challenge," I replied, sliding a folder across my desk. "Michael's had my personal finances legally separated from the business since day one. The $10 million valuation of my stake is protected by corporate structure. She signed off on all of it years ago without reading the fine print." James whistled low. Cold but smart. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly." Didn't it, though? She betrayed me twice over. As a wife and as a business partner. She'd plotted with Walton to undermine my company, while planning their future together with money she'd take from me in a divorce. She's going to try to reconcile, James predicted, reading the text over my shoulder. Classic move. When the affair partner becomes toxic and the financial reality sets in, they often try to salvage the marriage. Too late for that, I said, closing the folder. Michael's drawing up divorce papers as we speak. Later that evening, Melissa finally came home. I was in my study when I heard the front door open. Her footsteps were tentative, almost timid, so different from her usual confident stride. She appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. Her designer outfit was replaced by jeans and a simple sweater, her makeup minimal. She'd been crying. "Dan," she began, voice trembling. "I know you must hate me right now, but please, can we talk? 25 years has to count for something." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but a hollow ache where love had once lived. "It counted for something," I replied quietly. "To me." 3 days after the confrontation at the plaza, I sat alone in my study reviewing the divorce papers Michael had prepared. The terms were exactly as we discussed, fair according to the prenup, but with no concessions beyond what was legally required. After 25 years of marriage, Melissa had walked away for another man, completely unaware that I'd secured my $10 million stake in the business long before she even considered leaving. My phone buzzed with another text from her. "Please, Dan, we need to talk. I made a terrible mistake." I hadn't responded to any of her messages. There was nothing left to say. James had kept me updated on her activities, her frantic consultations with divorce attorneys, her discovery that Walton was now unemployed and under investigation, her increasingly desperate attempts to access accounts that were no longer available to her. The doorbell rang, breaking my concentration. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Melissa stood there, looking nothing like the polished, confident woman I'd been married to. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. "You haven't answered my texts," she said quietly. "I've been busy," I replied, not inviting her in. She hugged herself against the spring chill. "Dan, what happened with Chris was a mistake. A terrible lapse in judgment. 25 years together has to count for something. It counted for me," I said. "Apparently not for you." "I never meant to hurt you," she insisted. "Things haven't been right between us for years. You were always working, always focused on the next deal." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't try to make this my fault. You didn't just have an affair, Melissa. You betrayed me professionally. You tried to destroy what I've built." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I wasn't thinking clearly. "Chris said it was just business, that no one would get hurt. And you believed him." I laughed bitterly. "Or did you just not care as long as you got your share in the divorce?" Her silence was answer enough. "The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow," I said. "The terms are fair according to our prenup." "Dan, please." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Walton's been fired and blacklisted in the industry." I continued as if she hadn't spoken. "The SEC investigation will probably lead to criminal charges. Is that really the future you want?" She shook her head, fresh tears falling. "I want to come home. I want to fix this." Looking at her, I felt an unexpected wave of pity. She'd gambled everything, our marriage, her reputation, her financial security, on a man who'd used her and lost. "There's nothing to fix," I said gently. "It's over, Melissa." "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered, suddenly looking lost. I thought about our years together, the good and the bad, the dreams we'd shared and the life we'd built. Then I thought about her in that hotel room, laughing about celebrating in the Maldives while my career imploded. "That's not my problem anymore," I replied, closing the door softly but firmly between us. Through the window, I watched her walk slowly to her car, shoulders hunched in defeat. 25 years ended not with a bang, but with a quiet click of a closing door. 2 weeks after refusing Melissa's plea to come home, I received an unexpected call from James. "You're not going to believe this," he said without preamble. "Walton's been talking. A lot." I was reviewing potential investments in my office, finally able to focus on work again. "To whom?" "SEC investigators, Morgan Stanley's legal team, basically anyone who'll listen. He's trying to save his skin by throwing Melissa under the bus." I leaned back in my chair. "What's he saying?" "That the whole thing was her idea. That she approached him after recognizing him from that charity gala, knowing about the Nextech history. He claimed she was the one who suggested using your marriage to gain competitive intelligence." A cold weight settled in my stomach. Do you believe him? James hesitated. You won't like this, but our background on Melissa shows she made inquiries about divorce attorneys about 8 months ago, before the affair with Walton began. She also looked into Massachusetts divorce laws regarding business assets. The revelation shouldn't have hurt, but it did. Even before the affair, she'd been planning her exit strategy. There's more, James continued. She's been making calls to several of your investors, attempting to arrange meetings, claiming to represent your family interests in the business. That ends now, I said, anger finally breaking through my careful composure. Send everything you have to Michael. Every recording, every document, every photograph. I want a cease and desist letter on her doorstep by tonight. After hanging up, I sat in silence, processing this final betrayal. Melissa hadn't just fallen into an affair. She'd orchestrated a calculated attack on everything I'd built, using our marriage as the weapon. Michael called an hour later. The restraining order's been filed. She can't contact you, your business associates, or investors without facing legal consequences. Good. And the divorce. Judge Hartwell's reviewing it. Given the evidence, I don't anticipate any issues with the terms we proposed. What about Walton? Any chance of criminal charges? Michael sighed. SEC's still investigating. Corporate espionage is tricky to prosecute, but securities fraud has teeth. They're looking at his trading patterns around the deals Melissa gave him information about. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond this mess. The visionary tech acquisition was already proving more valuable than anticipated. Harrison and Blackwell's reputation had actually been enhanced by how we'd handled the situation, with 3 new promising startups reaching out for investment discussions. My phone buzzed with a text from Alicia Patel. Prototypes exceeding expectations. Dinner to celebrate when you're free. The invitation sparked something I hadn't felt in months. The simple pleasure of looking forward to something. Just dinner with a brilliant entrepreneur who respected me for my business acumen. Nothing more. I texted back. Thursday works. Send details. That evening, as I walked through our Newton home, soon to be just mine under the divorce agreement, I realized how much lighter I felt. The house that had seemed cavernous and empty now felt full of possibilities. In my study, I found a framed photo of Melissa and me from our 20th anniversary trip to Italy. I removed it from the wall, placing it in a box with other mementos of our life together. Not destroyed, just stored away, part of a past that no longer defined my future. The doorbell rang. The courier with the final divorce papers, requiring my signature. I answered the door with a surprising sense of peace. It was time to close this chapter and begin the next. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I stood at the podium of the Boston Business Leaders Awards, accepting Venture Capitalist of the Year. The irony wasn't lost on me. The crisis that nearly destroyed my company had ultimately strengthened it. The visionary tech acquisition had exceeded all projections, tripling in value after their security algorithm became the industry standard. Harrison and Blackwell had expanded, opening offices in New York and San Francisco. My personal stake in the company was now valued at over $15 million. Success isn't just about making good investments, I told the audience. It's about recognizing warning signs, protecting what matters, and having the courage to start over when necessary. As applause filled the ballroom, I caught Alicia Patel's eye at our table. Her smile was warm, private. What had begun as a business dinner 8 months ago had evolved into something neither of us had expected. A relationship built on mutual respect, shared ambition, and complete transparency. After the ceremony, we slipped away from the after-party to walk along the waterfront. The Boston skyline glittered across the harbor, lights reflecting on the dark water. Quite a year, Alicia remarked, her hand comfortably entwined with mine. Quite a year, I agreed. We stopped at a bench, overlooking the water. This felt like the right moment for what I'd been considering for weeks. I've been thinking about us, I began. Alicia turned to face me, her expression serious. That sounds ominous. Not at all, I assured her. Just the opposite. I've been thinking about how you've shown me what a real partnership looks like in business and in life. Her expression softened. Go on. I'm not talking about marriage, I clarified. I think we both know that's not where either of us is heading. But I'm talking about commitment. about building something together, intentionally. "I'd like that," she said simply. We sat in comfortable silence, watching boats move across the harbor. I thought about how different this feeling was from my years with Melissa. No pretense, no hidden agendas, just two people choosing each other day by day. James called the following morning as I was heading to the office. "Thought you want to know," he said. "Walton took a plea deal with the SEC. 2 years probation, permanent bar from the securities industry, and he has to pay back all proceeds from the trades based on your information." "And Melissa?" I asked, surprised to find I could say her name without any emotional charge. "Working at a gallery in Providence, keeping a low profile." I thanked him and hung up, feeling the final threads of my old life severing cleanly. At the office, I found a gift wrap package on my desk. Inside was a first edition copy of The Innovator's Dilemma with a note from Alicia, "To new chapters and clear eyes." I smiled, running my hand over the book's cover. The pain of betrayal had faded, replaced by hard-won wisdom and unexpected joy. I'd lost a wife but saved my company. I'd been forced to start over and found a better path forward. As I looked out my office window at the city below, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The simple pleasure of facing the future without fear, regret, or illusion. Just clarity, purpose, and the quiet confidence that comes from surviving your worst-case scenario and finding yourself stronger on the other side. Some endings are really beginnings in disguise.
Bye.